space for honest, unhurried conversations about faith, life, and becoming, especially for those of us who are trying to follow God but don't always have everything figured out. So, today I want to talk to you about something that I've been thinking about for a little while. I've been thinking about the tension between clarity and trust. And I want to give you some context because this was the result of me seeing a post on social media, which really got me thinking about this topic. And I'm going to read you the post so you can hear what it is. It's a post that was on Facebook from a Facebook page called Who I Am Now. And this is what the post said. When John Kavanagh, the noted and famous ethicist, went to Calcutta, he was seeking Mother Teresa and more. He went for 3 months to work at the House of the Dying to find out how best he could spend the rest of his life. When he met Mother Teresa, he asked her to pray for him. "What do you want me to pray for?" she replied. He then uttered the request he had carried thousands of miles: clarity. Pray that I have clarity. No, Mother Teresa answered, I will not do that. When he asked her why, she said, clarity is the last thing you are clinging to and must let go of. When Kavanagh said that she always seemed to have clarity, the very kind of clarity he was looking for, Mother Teresa laughed and said, I have never had clarity. What I have always had is trust. So I will pray that you trust God. So this particular post got me thinking. It sent me into a bit of a tailspin, I guess. It got me thinking about, as I said, this tension between clarity and trust. You see, because somewhere along the lines, I had become convinced that an in-tune Christian who is praying and connected with God will know exactly what they're doing. They'll know where they're meant to be going. They'll have spent time in God's presence and have a clear idea of the plan. And then, in classic way that God always works with me, I then stumbled across another podcast, which kind of added to this picture. In the podcast, the speaker said, if you are following God, you will always be heading somewhere you've never been. Again, this brought up this sense of lack of clarity or uncertainty or being in unexperienced territory. And so it got me thinking about clarity and trust. Now, let me start off by saying that I firmly believe that God can and does speak to us and give us clear instructions. There is a reason why Jeremiah 33:3 is one of my favourite scriptures. It says, call unto me, and I will answer you and show you great and mighty things that you do not know. We'll come back in a moment about why that's one of my favourite scriptures. So in no way am I saying that God doesn't give us clear instructions and that God doesn't speak to us. I firmly believe he does. But I am increasingly becoming aware that it is our natural human nature to know what's next. I encounter many of us, and I've done it myself, where we have been waiting for confirmation before acting. And sometimes it has got to the point of feeling a bit stuck, of feeling a bit delayed, of waiting for this uncertainty to lift, to be assured, to get to that point of assurance before stepping out and acting. It's come to the point where, for me, I believed that clarity would give me peace, and that was the only way I could get peace about my next decision, was by me knowing for sure that this what was God was saying. And so this challenged me. Jeremiah 33:3 is one of my favorite scriptures because it gives me a scripture that tells me that God's going to show me what's going on. But when I apply that scripture with my weaknesses and with my tendencies, It means that unintentionally, I can use that and use the idea of clarity to actually give me a sense of control. You see, when we talk about clarity and trust, when we talk about pursuing trust in God rather than clarity, we're talking about a struggle between control and surrender. Because clarity gives a sense of control. I'm clear about this. I know where I'm going. I know what I need to do. I am in control. Trust requires surrender, a letting go. And I am increasingly becoming aware, especially in my recent life seasons, that God doesn't always give clarity. And that is often intentionally. Because clarity is great, it answers questions, but trust does something different. Trust forms us, it grows us, it challenges us, it stretches us, it develops our relationship with Him. It forces us to surrender and let go. To say, God, I don't know where this is going, but I trust you. And in that process of growing in trust, it can bring a mirror up to our faces as we have to confront our unwillingness to let go of control. Let me say it for myself. It's brought a mirror up to my face where I have had to confront my unwillingness to let go of control. We say all the time that Jesus is Lord. And if you've been in church for long enough, at some point you have heard what that term Lord means. It means master. So when we say Jesus is Lord of my life, we're saying that He's the master. We're saying that He's in control. But the reality is that with our human nature and as Christians, we have to learn how to let go of that control that we have got so used to holding and walking with. And so, yes, it would seem that there will be times where God will withhold clarity to help us to learn how to trust Him. And this is not a new thing. Recently, I've been reading about Moses and the Israelites in the wilderness. And several things have stood out, but one thing that stood out a lot for me was this life where a cloud determined whether you packed up your stuff and moved or whether you stayed. The Israelites experienced miraculous things, manna falling from the sky, feeding them, water coming out of a rock, moving towards this promised land. So God had spoken, right? He had given them a promise for generations. He had delivered them from Egypt, and He said, I'm taking you to the promised land. And throughout their time in the wilderness, God spoke many, many times. But when we're reading those books as we follow the Israelites through the wilderness, it can be easy to forget that as much as God is speaking, there were moments of silence. There were moments where He wasn't saying anything. There would be gaps, weeks, months when the cloud didn't move. There'd be gaps, weeks, months between God saying something. And so each morning you would wake up to see what was going to happen that day. And whilst that could in some ways bring a sense of freedom, for people like me who like to control things, that doesn't seem very nice. The idea that someone gets to determine when I move, where I go, how I go, and I don't have a clear picture. Sure, I've got the end picture of the promised land, but what's in between? That unsettles me. But God will allow His people to be in these spaces to grow something different. He wants us all to get to a place where we really have a trust in Him, where we can truly pick up our lives, pick up the decisions we're making and hand it into his hands and trust that he's going to get us to where we need to get to. Proverbs 3 verses 5 and 6 speaks to this, right? We quote it all the time. I'm going to read it for you now. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will make straight your paths. But it's that part. Do not lean on your own understanding. Which brings me right back to the very beginning of what I was saying. It had never really resonated with me that trusting God would mean that sometimes I would not understand. It had never really resonated with me that having a lack of clarity does not necessarily mean that I've failed, that I haven't listened enough, but it might mean that I'm exactly where he wants me to be so I can grow in my trust in him. So, a question for you to consider. What if clarity isn't the goal right now? What if trust is the work? What would it look like to move without everything being clear? I want you to just sit with that. I want you to sit with the feelings that come up when you think about those questions. Notice them. Bring them to God. Because maybe you don't need more clarity. Maybe you need to trust what God has already shown you. I want to thank you for sitting with me in this time. And before we close, I want to read to you or share with you another quote from Mother Teresa. She says this: I don't know where I'm going. I don't see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end. What a quote. No polished certainty. No, I've heard God clearly. Just obedience without a map. And so my prayer for you is the same that Mother Teresa prayed for that gentleman. I won't necessarily pray for clarity, but I will pray that your trust in God will grow. If this resonated with you, just take a moment to sit with it. You don't have to rush to do anything with it. And I'll see you in the next episode.